nominations of weeks. The count began on Thursday last week. It will, in the interim, I'm using the word interim on purpose, it will in the interim end next week on Thursday. Why in the interim? Because we can in between announce extra measures relating to that decision. But in the meantime, that position still obtains. 2, we still maintain that our members resolve to continue doing the work of committees so that we can process other public matters. So that again is a stand. Today we are here to announce 2 extra activities countrywide. We have resolved that at every constituency a register is going to be opened where citizens are going to officially record their complaints. A register properly templated with the details that we desire is going to be placed at every constituency office of the Member of Parliament for citizens to register their complaints that have had their family members either disappeared, registered disappearance, detained without being produced in court, or for long duration without charge. You're also aware there are so many families that were forced to pay ransoms to security agencies to have family members released. We want to give these families a chance to make their complaint known, because we are going to pursue, we are going to demand for justice to these citizens. Victims of torture are going to be recorded so that we can also pursue justice for them. You are aware that some of the victims registered a number of complaints before the Human Commission. Like we know, the Commission is a state of capture and inertia. It has never followed some of these complaints, some of them for more than 2 years. They are happy to occupy these offices and draw salaries at the end of the day, and they have never acted on the complaints of citizens. So we want to follow up on these complaints too, as leaders in the country, to further heighten our demand for justice and freedom in our land. So we'd like to implore that members of Parliament, wherever you are, and this is not a preserve of members of Parliament from the opposition, including NRM members of Parliament. It is in your interest that you put up a register so that your people can register their complaints officially. And I would like to invite the public that if your member is timid to open up a register, cross over the next constituency. If it's not possible, we are going to provide telephone contacts where you can notify us and we move over to register your complaint officially. You are aware that at the end of which I judge as an end of our protest from the plenary, we intend to move a motion to investigate some of these crimes of intent. So that is the first announcement we are making. Public register for citizens to register their complaints officially, and it's going to be templated with the information we desire to be captured, and we shall use it for the purpose of getting justice, of demanding for justice for these people. 2, we have resolved to invoke Rule 109 of our rules of procedure and Article 118 of the Constitution to censure the Minister of Security. because the Ministry of Security, over the last 1.5 years, has been receiving complaints from the public. I laid documents in the Parliament, in his presence, over complaints from the public, over torture, over forced disappearances, over murders, and he did not respond, even when literally cajoled to respond. So the Ministry of Security, and I, as I speak, I've already lodged the official notice to the clerk. It's properly received by the office of the clerk. The office of the speaker has received, and the office of the deputy speaker has received this notice of censure officially. So by the end of the day tomorrow, we'll have the documents for censure moving for members to sign their, to append their signature. If they're interested in the procedure, the rules are very, very clear, and we're going to forward them to the letter. We believe that the Ministry of Security has totally abdicated responsibility, is in breach of that public duty, and seemingly is not concerned, is not bothered, and we find him unfit to continue being in occupation of that sensitive public office. And therefore, as part of our protest, we want him censured for either his director's collusion with the tormentors of the population as a sign of displeasure for their status quo. I want to thank you. If there are questions, let them come now. Yes, sir?
Thank you very much. My name is Mathius Mpuuga. Some of the medias will come back.
Speak up kindly.
First and foremost, I'd like to make a quick the censor motion against the Ministry of Security. Of course, this is not the first time we see a will be in that seat. Are you sure that we'll be able to raise enough funds to stay in work? Second, are you also having another plan have a conversation with government if it's happening with since most of the
Mr. Girinya, I have talked about the procedures we are taking, and I have not mentioned negotiation, so I will not talk about it. As to whether we shall raise the signatures, we are out to settle the minister, and those who are convinced about our call will sign. You don't force people to sign. People are convinced to sign. Those who are convinced that this minister is not fit will rejoin us, because we find him culpable in all these crimes against the population, and therefore he is a legitimate target for censure. He will serve as an example to others to take public duty seriously. You say it's not the first time. This is the elected parliament. He is the first minister we are censuring.
Yes, thank you, Honorable. My name is Didan Kimathi. I report for Chintu Post. You talked about that black book that you're trying to open, documenting all these abuses. I've seen the black book of 79, seen the black book of the 80s. Recently, we had our brothers from DP who are trying to come up with, I think they drafted something, but I don't know whether we have a culture. You know, we document and things remain like that. What ingredients are you bringing to the table? How different is this one going to be? In that it won't remain there just for the record.
In 79, I was 4 years. In 80, I was 5 years. I am the leader of the opposition. In my statement, I did not mention a black book. I talked about a register. You called a crimes register, or a register of complaints, We are doing our public duty because this is the time we are leaders. I wonder whether anyone of these honorable members was an MP in 1979 or 1980. So times change, times evolve. We are here to discharge our duty in our time. We want to make our own mistakes when we are in occupation of these public offices. We want to make our mark in our time. We are not here because we are held hostage by the past. We look to a better future, which is why we are convinced about what we are doing.
Thank you so much, Honorable Leader of Opposition. My name is Julius Mchana from NBS TV. Yes, I want to start with you on the censure of the Minister for Security, but he has not been working in isolation. Are you looking at other dockets of government that have given you a blind ear on all the numerous submissions you've made on the floor of Parliament? Take an instance, the Speaker of Parliament, the Deputy Speaker who's been chairing, the Human Rights Commission. Are you looking at only the security, or are you going to also extend your arm of censure to the other government MDs? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Julius. The other day, the government chief whip was advising us on how to oppose them. The choices we make are choices we educate ourselves about. And you're right. If you line up people who have abdicated duty, there are several in line that probably could have been helpful in this endeavor in ensuring justice for our people. We're not going to blanket everyone. If you line them up for indictment, each one of them has a different charge sheet, and you're going to charge them individually. Let's start with this. We have made mention of the reluctancy, the lack of vigor, the lack of presence of the Human Rights Commission, and they are abdicating their duty under Article 52 of the Constitution. We believe they are equally indictable, but we shall move step by step. Yesterday I talked about the challenge of the judiciary, and how the judiciary in these circumstances is called upon the discharge of their duty, be sensitive to these public concerns. And when they really exercise judicial activism in these circumstances, they will be well understood. So, but in the meantime, we shall deal with these problems one by one. Where we need to blanket, we shall make those choices. But for now, the space at our disposal is that of the minister, and we are going to seize that space. Enemies.
Mr. Katibu.
Yes, sir. Right, Honorable. First of all, I wanted to convince us that this censure is something to report about. A parliament fully dominated by NRM, for opposition to speak about censoring a minister, that should be the last resort. Because convince us that this can happen, because we can write about it and data is there too. For the first time, we have seen you in a bitter exchange, a man who is known to be a diplomat. A bitter exchange with a former member, former Kosasa chairperson in Baraka Munagwa. And we are shocked, because we've known you to be a diplomat who cannot trade insults in public. Thank you.
First of all, I don't need to convince you about what I'm doing.
How?
You please move with your camera and you will judge us. Secondly, each honorable member in this house has their own hand and signature. And that signature is only released when you are convinced about the story, regardless of political persuasion. So our clarion call is going to be for the entire membership of the House of Parliament, to see whether we can find commonality in dealing with crime in our midst. And because our tradition has been that we do not know the next victim, if we allow ourselves to be divided when crime, when injustice is facing us, then trouble is looming on the horizon. So I'm very sure this will find comfort with so many members of other parties, including the ruling party, and I believe they will move with us. And the beauty is that we know the procedures, and if we favorite the signatures, again, we have no deficit of options to achieve similar or related goals. About my altercation, probably I would not regard that an altercation. I was just blessing the honorable member in the right place.
Yes.
My name is Robinson. I work in the city. I asked about the register. How long is the exam going for? How long do people have to run after register? And then after collecting these names, where are you taking them? Where should people have their hope in this?
Okay, for the benefit of the meeting, we rule 109 very quickly about the procedure. But the first step is to provide a notice, which we have done today. The subsequent step is for the clerk to produce a list of members of parliament before they are decided at arms, from where members will go and print their signatures. That takes 10 days. The subsequent procedure is to officially move on the floor, and the rules are very clear on that. Okay?
I was after asking about the book that you're placing at the constituency.
The constituency? No, the register?
At the constituency.
The register, we are doing the template, and I think they should be ready tomorrow. And when they are ready, we shall notify the public. Okay? And depending on the turnout, or how fast, because everything has a time frame, would judge by the time members of the public take to respond. The beauty is that we shall be addressing you regularly, so we shall be able to scan through the proceedings and therefore advise accordingly.
Yes, sir. Yes, my name is Joseph from Impact FM. My question is that every action performed by this hand, the head must be part of it and should take a big portion of it. Essentially, Minister of Security, it's like you taking another side. Do you fear the head? We don't hear you talking about the head because it determines the action of his hand. Do you fear the head?
Well, depending on where you're coming from. The future is that all of it is in our space. And if I want to cut down a big tree, I can begin with the branches. I'll achieve the same goal.
Thank you so much. Lord. My name is Rachel Nakasi. I work for Kenya. Government is expected to bring a statement in plenary today. Who is going to be in the House to receive it on your behalf? And how will you know what's going on, what they're trying to do, so that you can maybe calm down on what you're doing or allow them to be next step?
It will be a very interesting scene, and I implore you to have your cameras being on them. So that a gang of criminals are presenting their own statement and discussing, that will be very okay. So, we are in protest. I would like to really see how they're debating their own crime and how they indict themselves for the crimes committed. So we are not there. We are protesting. Let them present it, discuss it, and really make a resolution on their own. We are not bothered, we are not moved. When we return, we shall make our own statement and we shall ask our own questions. We shall not really go by their rules.
Albert was commenting about the register. Where is this register going to? Is it going to go down to the villages? Are we going to have an office at the constituency, like maybe the area MP's office, where the register will be? And also, aren't you calling for more state actions against Ugandans? Because we've seen some political parties in the past try to open up similar registers, but whoever would come to register would meet the state. They would even sometimes call you rebel groups trying to mobilize people to go against the government. So how are you trying to address such issues?
But the future is that the public is accustomed to that kind of problem. In the interim, we resolved that a register will be at every member's constituency office. That's where the public will be able to access it. And we know we are not oblivious of the intimidation. Remember, for every person that has been tortured, they have been given an advisory not to ever speak out the torture. But I can assure you, these members of parliament and others not here have been speaking to some of these victims, and they are ready to testify. Can I also tell you that many of these victims are in court against the state, so therefore their matters are no longer private matters. But we are alive to these challenges, and we shall address them as they arise, because we know that the same groups in denial will be interested in knowing who is reporting this. Okay? But we are going to invite the people to come out, because we must end this. This must end in our time. And we are going to invite the public to be with us, to move with us, and to be somebody the courage to really come out. The same way Kapwenza was intimidated, including some funny magistrate intimidated him not to speak up. But he has spoken up. So this is what we need. This is what we are going to ask for the young public, someone that courage to speak up.
Thank you, Lord. Maybe just a last one. If I could tap on your parliamentary knowledge and wisdom on how Parliament runs, I know that the little knowledge I have on plenary runs on quorum. As you are well on strike, you protest not to attend plenary. What is going to happen? Because it deals with quorum. What the little knowledge I have? If this is brought into Parliament and there is quorum, what is going to happen with the opposition? Yes, they're going to debate among each other, but just give me on.
If what?
What is going to happen if a report is brought and no one is receiving it on the opposition side and there is quorum to pass it? What is the judgment of the opposition?
Thank you, Julius. The opposition side is not exceptionally less. That we are there to receive what they are giving. Okay? That House of Parliament is supposed to conduct business on behalf of the people. Okay? And if the members therein feel comfortable, first of all, I find it very discomforting that the House of Parliament in a multi-party dispensation will continue sitting as if things are normal. For me, it's an open enlightenment of their feelings about our complaint. And we cannot apologize for staying away. Their very reason and conviction to continue doing what they're doing as if things are normal. And the first we are saying it's not normal. We must first address this particular matter. It's whether they have quorum, again, that's not the preserve of the opposition. It is the preserve and the judgment of the presiding officer to figure out whether they believe in the House that this is a multi-party House, and therefore there is every need for them to find other ways of dealing with the business.